Welcome to Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo, brought to you by Holy Chuck Burgers. Our business is burgers.
Good morning, Katarina Witt. There's no such thing as bad boys, only boys with bad hair.
Sponsored by Maxwell's Clothiers, your bespoke tailor since 1961. And now, your host of Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo, Chuck Basti. And welcome back to the new and improved version of Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo. I'm your producer, Cam LaRock, alongside the host, Chuck Basti. Chuck, what's up?
That's me. We have a really exciting show today with Tara Slone formerly from Rogers Hometown Hockey, and obviously the artist known as Tara Slone. She's now down in San Jose, working for the Sharks, which is another great favorite team of mine. And really excited to get into the show with Tara. But before we do, Cam, you met Tara at Hometown Hockey in Dresden.
I did. Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be at a Dresden Junior Kings game on a Friday night, and it just so happened that Hometown Hockey was in Chatham, Kent that weekend, and Tara and Ron showed up to our little Junior C arena the night that we were changing the name of our arena after Ken Houston. He passed away, a former NHL player. And yeah, we didn't know that Ron and Tara were going to be there, so that was a great surprise. Got a couple autographs, and it's great to be on the podcast with Tara now and get to tell the story.
Yeah, you know what? I really miss Hometown Hockey because just exactly what you said, there's stories just like that. And they're in the thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands from all the stops they made across. And it was a lot of work of that, I have no doubt. But I mean, and we saw 1/10 of 1% of what it took to put on that massive show, of where they went, the logistics they had to do through COVID, not COVID, all that as well. But the moments that those shows created, hit you right in the feels as well.
Exactly.
So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have Tara on the show as well. So yeah, looking forward to having her on the show and having a great show.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I think it's about time to bring her up and get me out of here.
All right, let's do that. That's a good trade.
Not too bad.
Oh, come on. Can't we all just get along?
This is the toxic men's culture that we participate in, like me and my producer.
You guys are clearly not toxic. So
no,
you're men, however.
Yeah. Well, but thank you so much for joining us as well. This has been in the works for a little while, but I'm more than overjoyed to have you on the podcast. As I say, I'm a big fan of your work, and I have to say, you as an artist, as a musician, I have you to blame for one of my very first stories with my wife at the time, because she was a big kind of like alternative music listener, and I like Neil Diamond and Elton John. So if it's not from that era, I won't know it. And your song "Sometimes I Want to Die" with Joy Drop was like something that she just blared when she was like cleaning and just running around the house. And she had that song on. I had no idea who Joy Drop was back then or who you were back then. And then when I heard the song again, I'm like, oh my God, the feelings came back again, Tara. I was just like, that's so.
Listen, it was at a time, it was quite ubiquitous across Canada, and I'm super grateful for that time of my life.
I would think so. And before we start, I wanted to kind of take a few minutes to talk about, as an artist, we all have that kind of gift of music inside of us. You took it to a whole nother level. Obviously, you're on the NXS reality show as well. Was it, were you the fifth person or the sixth person before the end?
No, I came in ninth. I was actually the first. There were 4 Canadians on the show. So this show, unlike a lot of others, only featured the finalists. So there was a whole process that was not on camera. So we started out with 15. So I was number 9, and the first of the Canadians to exit.
And just your experience with that in your process and what you learned, your takeaways?
Honestly, it was really hard. It took me a long time to appreciate what it gave me, and I think what it accomplished, first of all, was just an incredible bond of friendship with almost everybody there. They really wanted to pit us musicians against each other to create drama because we were on like 3 times a week. So, we were mic'd up and we were living in a house together and they were showing the reality side as well as the music side. Except it didn't really work, except for the guy who won, JD Fortune, he made for good drama, but the rest of us we
It
just
was.
loved each other. We were all, we didn't feel competitive with one another. Um, Everybody was different. Everybody was really established and proficient at their craft. So that was for me the best part. But yeah, I mean, being on a reality show, it's like living in a fishbowl. We didn't have any contact with the outside world. Our phone calls were monitored. Like people weren't allowed to tell us what they were seeing on TV. Um, and you're kind of just, the whole idea is they're nurturing this fear in you, and you're living in fear of getting kicked off the show. And yeah, it felt hard. I think every one of us, even people who came in, second, third, had some emotional difficulties afterwards. It's just a really intense experience to kind of be there and then for it to end. And when it ends, it just ends.
Yeah, and I had a memory of that as well because I went to Copper Park School for the Performing Arts in Mississauga, and JD Fortune actually went there as well, and he was a year or two behind me. And I remember getting calls from reporters
Hmm.
all the time on my landline at the office that I was working for, asking me if I had any knowledge of him. And of course, that wasn't his real name, and I didn't know who he was. I had to go back to my yearbook and find him and realize, that's the guy we used to bully like in the hallway. Yeah, and if you get bullied at the School of the Arts, it was pretty bad because everybody there was pretty artsy, right?
Poor JD.
So well, listen, I want to talk to you a little bit, starting up with hometown hockey because that's how we started off with the start of the show. And I was a big fan of Rogers hometown hockey, and I said a little bit with Cam, my producer, before we started the show that I'm sure that being to a few of those, there is a ton of work, and I mean a ton of work of people behind the scenes. Even Ron was telling me, like the stuff you don't see that we have to do. It's a lot of work, but we get to see the finished product of it. You're there, 12-hour days and going to the schools before we even start and get your content for the week. So I thought maybe we just start a little bit more with like the process of hometown hockey and just what you found from the engagement from all the diversity of Canada, from East Coast to West Coast, and what that gave you.
Oh my gosh, it was incredible. It was the greatest gift, not just to explore Canada in that way and to experience all of these different communities, but also just to be welcomed like that and to also be trusted. Ron and I always talked about, these communities allowing us to tell their stories. We kind of we're collectors of stories and information, and then on the Sunday night broadcast, we would convey that information. And it was really important to us to make those communities proud and to get it right. And, so in that way, I definitely felt a lot of pressure because you just don't want to screw anything up. You don't want to leave anything out or anybody out. The process itself, for people who only saw the show on TV and didn't actually experience on the ground, there was a whole weekend festival that was associated with the broadcast. So there was a whole crew that traveled through the duration of the season from stop to stop. They drove across Canada and back again and back again. And they were also incredible ambassadors for the show, for the community. And then we also had the broadcast crew getting everything up and going and, through all kinds of weather, as you can imagine. So it was a tremendous group effort. And I've never worked with a team like that. I've never worked with a team that is that invested. And I'm sure I never will. It was really special. And I feel like it was the greatest privilege afforded to me. So I miss it too. I think there's nothing like it on TV. And I think there's an absence, there's a gap in the landscape. And right now is the time of year where Ron and I would be, doing our promotion for the season and, doing some shoots, getting ready for the first stop. And it's not happening. So, on the other hand, I mean, COVID, we were definitely a COVID casualty. times have changed, and it's, we did what we could with the time that we had. So I treasure it.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I was at an event with Ron just when George was coming into CBC into the foray, and Ron and I were talking about that, and he was just so gracious. I mean, I can't even imagine being in the position where you're a CBC anchor, then a young guy's going to come by and unseat you in your position and go a different way. And I remember Ron just saying, Chuck, I've had a really good run. If this just ended, but wherever there's a door that closes, a window opens, or however the saying goes. And he's like, there's this new thing coming out that they've given me called Rogers Hometown Hockey. And of course I had no idea what that was. And he was telling us about, what it was going to be doing. Cool concept, like not a bad idea. But then of course, a couple of years later, when it didn't work out with George for whatever reason, they come back, and I asked Ron again about that, and he's like, my stipulation was that I can still continue to do hometown hockey because I love that so much, and that experience and the energy that we were able to get and retrieve and be able to go back into the communities and give back into those communities was just too much to pass up. And so they made that caveat as well. Then we get a picture of you and Ron together, with a hot mic and in your hands as well, that we want to kind of bring up and show. There you guys are there. And I mean, there's 1,000 of these pictures that you guys can have as far as, going across Canada back and forth as well. So maybe we could just bring in a clip that we had a couple of years ago when I had run on the podcast. I was asking him about a little bit about you. And so he prepared a clip as well that we have on the podcast as well. We'll bring that up, Cam, and then we'll cue that and talk about Ron MacLean and how he first met you, Tara. All right. Picture you and Tara Slone. So I spoke to Tara this week, and she told me to ask you about your meeting at Starbucks. And I have no idea what she's talking about, but she said, ask Ron about the meeting at Starbucks. It's pretty funny story. So.
Well, so I'm told by Gord Cutler, who was a producer, had come over from TSN to be Rogers was starting up their 12-year deal, and he was kind of the guy in charge of all the shows. And he said, Ron, I'd like you to meet at Starbucks at 2:00 on whatever day of the week it was. And so it's Tara Slone. I'd like you to meet her because we're considering her for hosting duties on our hometown hockey show. And now at this point, we don't know anything about who's going to be doing hometown hockey or what it is. But I go to the Starbucks, and there's Tara with a girlfriend, and her girlfriend gets up and leaves, and I'm sitting and talking to Tara, and we're waiting for Gord Cutler, and he never does show up. He just wanted to see if the two of us could coexist, and that was about Tara, which is on the In Excess reality TV show, and Joy Drop was a very successful Canadian alternate rock band. But I only Googled and learned that, prior to meeting her. And so I was able to fudge small talk, but she's, her, she's extremely social and gracious. And yeah, it was a great introduction to two people not knowing what the hell they were about to launch into for now 7 years.
Yeah, I thought that was just one of the things that I bring up with Ron as well, because I thought that was, I saw your reaction when he mentioned the word Starbucks, and you're just like, and you popped it in as well. Just let me know how that meeting went for you.
It was the same thing. We felt a little bit like, stranded. But same thing with him. I mean, he's so gracious and he's so easy. I don't think we talked about hockey at all. I think we talked about music and, like he's a great conversationalist. So it was, they were letting him vet me. And I don't think, it would have taken a lot. I would have had to come in wielding a knife or something for him to say, no, I don't think she's suitable for the show. Like he never wants to take on that role. But we got along great. So it worked.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, I just think your on-air presence as well was symbiotic. I mean, I think that, you had times where you had strong opinions on certain things that you shared. Mm-hmm. He didn't cut you off. He gave you space. You were able to, do the same thing with Ron as well. I mean, Ron, like you said, he's a gracious host as well. but you're two different people, and you're covering a myriad of topics across the spectrum. Traveling across country, being away from your family, flying time zones as well. So one of the things I wanted to bring up as well is just some of the things that you probably wouldn't get a chance to see off the air side of the impact that Rogers Hometown Hockey had. So when you guys came to Georgetown, a friend of mine, Victoria, had come down with her daughter, and she wanted to meet Ron as well. And you ended up going to Victoria's daughter's school. And so I would be remiss if I didn't include the video that we're going to clip up here of my friend Victoria thanking you for what you did that weekend as well. So we're going to have Ken clip that up and then show you what the impact is of people that you don't normally get to see, offline. So here we go.
I had the opportunity to meet Tara Slone a few years ago at my daughter's school in Georgetown, Ontario for hometown hockey, and she was absolutely amazing. It was such a pleasure to meet her, to spend a little bit of time with her, and she truly did make such a difference in the kids' lives that she spoke to that day. Beautiful, confident, successful, and kind woman, a woman in sports, and a woman that truly speaks to everything Canadian. So thank you so much, Tara. You were an absolute pleasure, and honestly, thank you for being such an incredible and just good human.
Well, that's really sweet. Gosh.
I like the good human part. Because, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, you can be a mom, you can be an artist, you can be a television personality. None of those things really matter if you're not a good human.
I agree. Yeah, no, that's really nice to hear. I mean, I think, all you can do is just put yourself out there and be authentic and hope that it resonates. And I absolutely believe that, representation matters in all facets of life. And so, as a woman in sport, a woman in hockey, I think just by being there, it's also, it can hopefully be a moment in a kid's life where they either say, I want to do that, or yeah, like women do that too.
Yeah, I like the fact that you segue into where we're going to go with the PWHL now, because they're 3 months away from having their season starting in January as well, and they've finally been able to get their stuff together, so that way they're one league. Hopefully, the sponsors now pick up the rest of the slack, and then they're able to use the marketing wheel. I think the cities that they've chosen are great hockey cities, especially the 3 in Canada. But I thought I'd just get your take on what you see as the future for females in hockey. Now having their own professional league, where like the young fans can now like look and see what is now possible.
Well, I mean, I think those of us who have been paying attention know how fractured it has seemed, with little glimmers of hope, coming through. The PHF did get to a point where they were offering some pretty substantial salaries, but they were still not aligned with the PWHPA, which had most of the national team members, not all, but most of the more elite, high level hockey players. So, yeah, it's just been, it's been unfortunately a bit of a hot mess for so long. And I think again, those of us who have been paying attention are like, what has taken so long? But obviously, finally, I think they wanted to get all of their ducks in a row. You don't want to come out without a fully formed, fully fledged plan. They have a collective bargaining agreement. It is set up, and the people who are running it are quality people. When you have Billie Jean King behind you, it's going to get done properly. And so I think this is absolutely the right way to start. You start with 6 teams. Original 6 obviously has some resonance, for those of us in hockey. And it'll grow from there. And I have no doubt that, anytime that people have the opportunity to see this product, they'll be like, holy crap, because we watch it during the Olympics, we see best on best, and it blows your mind, and it will blow people's minds. So they just need the opportunity to see it. The teams are playing 24 games, which is, pretty decent start. People will have a chance to see it live. And then of course, there'll be a broadcast product. So I think it's huge. I mean, it is sad to me that there are definitely some players, with PHF contracts who are left wondering what they're going to do with their lives, or can they still play hockey at all? So, eventually I wonder, I hope there's some minor league level, there's some tiered level, where people can work their way up to the PWHL. But this is fantastic, like such great news. And the time for women's sport is now. When it's on TV, it's huge. The Canadian women's soccer team just broke the record for attendance in Canada. We're seeing, tens and tens of thousands of people show up for soccer games. In Europe, we're seeing, just numbers grow for the WNBA, for volleyball, for tennis. So the time is now, and I think it's just gonna explode.
I have a little, wish list as well that I'm trying to share and trying to keep inside, so that way it doesn't get out of hand on my expectations not getting met as well. But I really truly think that Brian Burke, after he departed from the Penguins back in the spring, which I thought was really kind of untimely, but Brian's time as a general manager, I think, is kind of wasted, because Brian just sees more structure in hockey operations in communities. And oh yeah, there's Brian smiling.
Classic.
Say, hey, Brian, we're gonna have a picture here. Brian, you want to smile? He's like, I am smiling. Like, quick, let's take this picture before you actually frown then, because
his eyes are smiling, I can tell.
Yeah, he's got kindness somewhere inside of that as well. But that's Berkey. I mean, he's a prickly bear. But I mean, I've been at conversations with him at the Air Canada Center, when it was the Air Canada Center. Just talking about minor hockey, and how USA Hockey has morphed into the superpower that they are right now. It's no longer just Minnesota, Maine, the Boston, New England area as well. Now it's truly, a sport that transcends all 50 states, where you can now play hockey. But I'm really hoping that Brian is able to do his magic in the marketing in the communities and connect as he well does. So that way, that, like you said, like women's sport is now, and now you've got this one kick at the can. I think this is an amazing opportunity for him to take that ball and run with it, and really turn that around, and hopefully give it the momentum that I think that sport was, especially in Canada, because I think it'll do really well in Canada. But overall, it's just for structure. There's a million moving parts in any hockey team, especially with logistics and travel as well. But just kind of your thoughts on the forward movement of that and the logistics that move forward as well.
I mean, I don't have anything more to say than I said. I think I just, they wouldn't have, they were not going to come out without everything lined up. So, there were some question marks in terms of where the teams would play, but they already they've got everything. So I don't think there'll be any scrambling at the last minute to figure things out. And they've chosen markets where they know that this can work and that they will find an audience. And so, I don't know how long it'll take the league to expand by maybe, another couple. But I think with the people who are involved in this, it's serious. This is serious business. And the players, the Players Association, the PWHPA, they were not going to move forward until it was right. And that's why it took so long.
Yeah, and fair point as well. And I mean, to me, like, I think one of the biggest things that I'm looking at is the education that's got us to this point right now, and what they've learned. And education is obviously something that's sorely missing in hockey culture as well. Which brings us to our next point about talking about Hockey Canada, and this might get a little raw as well. So I thought we'd just start. It's been a year since Sheldon Kennedy, put his foot down and started that instigation of the board being removed from Hockey Canada. It's a year later right now, and it's still kind of in flux. We do have a new board as well, but like you said something as well, that you talked about education. And it's something that's sorely missing in the Hockey Canada, I guess, infrastructure. How do you make change? And some of the things I love on your social media content that you share is, how to be an ally, how to make change, what good culture looks like. What are the things that you should, stand up for? Like, what should you say? Because, my dad's in the Army. And so I grew up on bases my entire life. We didn't really discriminate against anybody but the French, especially in the hockey arena, because that was a kind of friendly rivalry as well. But my dad used to say, that we protect everybody's right to choose, especially if we disagree with it, because that's the country that we're committed to. So when it comes down to race, gender, ethnicity, religion, any of those are human constructs as points as well. And the freedom to choose is why we love being Canadians as well. So that education for me, I've grown up with that, being in the service as well. What I notice in hockey is that, there isn't that culture as well. So I thought I'd just give you a couple minutes to talk about how you see that hockey culture, what can change in that toxic hockey culture, and how we need to be better allies in order to move forward to rid ourselves of this cancerous energy and be able to create good young kids.
I mean, I will say that, now more than ever, I see that there's a problem in sport. Hockey has its own specific flavor, I guess, but there are calls for a full overhaul of sport in Canada, and and calls for that in the US similarly. So, sport does not feel like a safe space for a lot of people. But in terms of hockey, it just tends to be a silo. Once you kind of get into a group, the group kind of travels along. And, especially once you get to the higher levels of hockey, things like accountability start to go out the window. And you see that with players like Logan Mailloux, who was drafted in the first round by the Habs. That caused an uproar because, he had some
photos.
Yes, had shared explicit photos without a woman's consent, and still managed to get himself drafted in the first round. So, when those things keep happening over and over again, that reinforce that if you're a good enough hockey player, what you do in the real world doesn't matter. Well, why would anybody think otherwise? So, I think there are changes that need to happen at every level. I think it has to start, when kids are very young, and having conversations about being inclusive. What's it like to have different people on your team? How are you going to treat somebody when they're in trouble? Like, these really fundamental, team discussions need to start at a young age. And we have to empower kids who turn into adults to speak out if they see something wrong. That's another thing that we see. I think in any kind of group mentality, there's a lot of fear of going against, your teammates, or so you see something and you just put it away. And that really is, I think that's a hockey thing, right? Like, it's so much more about the team than it is about the individual. And that has its great aspects to it as well, when it comes to play and sort of sacrifice. But when it comes to the safety of individuals on the team, how people are treated, really serious incidents, people have to learn how to stand up and say, I saw that. That's wrong. I'm not going to let that happen. So it really is. I think, there's just so many small systemic changes that need to happen. But yeah, education, I think, is the biggest piece. And it can't be things like just show your team a video. It has to be much more personal, much more hands-on, much more engaged, because I've had conversations with players who are like, yeah, they showed us a bullying video, but I fell asleep.
Yeah. I think that one of the things I loved about Sheldon Kennedy and his respect group is, Sheldon's been committed to that project for decades. And I've said this before on many different shows, but there's people there that could just barely get through the trauma they incurred. And then there's people that can go through the trauma and then they get sober or they get healthy through therapy or through time. And then there's people like Sheldon Kennedy, which can go through the trauma, fix themselves as well, and then get to the point of helping other people, address their trauma and what that is as well. And that just comes from education as well. And Sheldon's been a champion for that as well with the respect group, Battle of the Blades that he did. But there's a picture of Sheldon during the Battle of the Blades as well. And, just does tireless work. But if he didn't stand up and put his head on the chopping block against Hockey Canada, I don't think that board resigns, and I don't think that board comes down. Now we've got new people in there like Cassie Campbell-Pascal as well, which will now implement change and then be able to put that board in the right direction, like you said, by creating education and being able to figure out what needs to get done as well in order to just be a nice person as well. And I was really conflicted at that point as well, because I couldn't get to the point where I was trying to face my junior hockey board and to implement that change as well. It just seemed to me everybody was stuck on that. I'm like, I don't get what I'm missing here. Like, we're not taking a stand against Hockey Canada. We're taking a stand for young kids. We're taking a stand against toxic culture that is not going to serve them moving forward, whether they're male or female or whatever. It doesn't make a difference. The difference that makes for them is how to be a good human being as well. So I was really conflicted in that. And you had a clip with Hometown Hockey that I want to play as well. That I entitled I'm Really Conflicted as well. I think you know the one I'm talking about.
Yes, I do.
Show everybody else as well, because this was kind of intense at the time, but I was like, go Tara, go Tara. So let's play that clip right now.
Wow. It's been a really tough week to be a hockey fan. And, that's why I got into this business. And I know I'm speaking to a lot of like-minded people out there who've had a really hard time kind of coming to grips with this and reckoning their fandom with what seems to be happening in the National Hockey League. I'm conflicted. And today, specifically during Gary Bettman's progress that's been made over the last 10 years, and I'm very much editorializing here. This is me, Tara, speaking, just making that very clear. But I'd like to say that over the last 8 not led when it comes to Black Lives Matter and racial justice and leading the way in that way. They are not. They're falling behind. I have seen a league that has followed and not led when it comes to staffing with women and people of color in places that matter. I've seen a team this very calendar year draft a player in the first round who was found to have distributed images, sexual images, without consent. And then this last week, we see the most heart-wrenching interview from Kyle Beach, the most heart-wrenching admission that I think we'll ever see in this game. And what I am seeing is all of the players, from the players to anybody who has a voice in this matter and who could say, I'm just so sorry. I see the culture of silence being upheld, and it is devastating. And the reason that I feel so passionate about this, and so many of you do out there, is because this matters to us as humans, and we love this game, and we just want it to be better. And it isn't. And anybody who thinks that this culture is not deeply broken is wrong.
So I can't imagine what you took in the teeth by saying that as well, but I'm going to ask you, what did you take in the teeth?
I got a lot more support than I thought. I was nervous, but for me, it was one of those moments where I just couldn't remain silent anymore. First of all, we were airing a Chicago game.
Wow.
So that was part of it for me. Maybe if it hadn't have been a Blackhawks game, maybe we would have done some mention, because so much had happened with the Kyle Beach interview and then subsequently Gary Bettman's press conference, which was like jaw-droppingly appalling. So I think we would have said something, but the fact that Chicago was playing, we had to address it head on. And I didn't blindside anybody. Nobody asked me what I was going to say, but certainly our producers, Ron, everybody knew where I stood. And I think so many people in the hockey world felt similarly. They just didn't feel like they had the platform, or the freedom to say it. And I knew that actually, my team had my back, and they, you mentioned Ron giving space. Like, Ron gave me the space to say what I wanted to say. My producer gave me that space too. Nobody asked for a script, nothing. And so, yeah, I mean, for sure, there are always going to be the people who are the consummate defenders of the status quo when it comes to hockey. It's too scary, to think otherwise for some people out there. But there are a lot of people who I think, want to see hockey be better. And I think the Kyle Beach assault and then interview, and how brave he was, and Rick Westhead's incredible reporting. I think that was like the straw that broke the camel's back for a lot of people, because they're like, okay, I knew it was bad, but like, this is really bad. This is a team that brushed something under the rug so that they could concentrate on winning a Stanley Cup. Like, it's too much. So fewer people than you think were angry with me. I'm sure the league was very angry with me. But I still work in hockey, so I haven't been cast out completely.
I don't know. I want to disagree on my side for the reaction, because I kind of troll your Instagram a little bit, and there was a lot of pushback on that. And again, a lot of like trolls that just come out. Yeah. And that,
but they're all the same. They're all the same. They're like, and in fact, I would say that maybe sort of put me in a specific category. I was already, that person, but that maybe like propelled me into really being that person. So I would say I get more pushback probably, after that. Yeah, like there are a few of us out there who get it. But again, there was a lot more support than lack thereof.
I'm so glad to hear that, because
yeah,
when you're in that and you're kind of watching it real time, you almost start to look away, because you can just see the impending train wreck just about to happen. And you're like, this is not going to end. Like, there's I know the troll section. Like, and to be fair, like, I've been part of toxic hockey culture on the bad side. As a kid, and you're being raised in an environment. And I can say that now, not because I was proud of it, it's because I've got out of it. I've had to learn from people in my life that are now mentors. Why did you hate these people? What did they do to you? And I had to realize, well, I don't hate those people. I was just taught that, and I don't have any of these biases. And I had to work through all that to really release those and free myself up of this bigotry or the hatred or the resentment that I carried, and realize it was just a construct. And, there's a lot of people there that are now going to be going through their foot stomping moment, because the people who got their finger on the power switch, they don't want to give that up. And this threatens their way of doing business. There's a great line in that movie, Moneyball, at the end of the movie, where Brad Pitt is talking with the Boston Red Sox owner, and he says, you're threatening the way that the game is being played. And the people who have that power, they don't like that. And whenever that happens, you're going to take it in the teeth going through that wall, and you're the first person to go through that wall with Bill James metrics. And I saw you as being, that Billy Bean character going through that wall in hockey, because a lot of people there, like, we're humans. We got mortgages, we got kids,
sure.
We don't have the ability sometimes to go through that wall, because, we lose houses, we lose careers. And so whenever someone does go through that wall, like what you did, I just stand back and just go, wow, like, how do we be an ally? And so I guess that's my next question. So as a male, a white male, that I've had privileges my entire life that I didn't know I had, or that obstacles weren't in front of me systematically, I don't know, because I don't know anything different than how I've grown up. So, like, being a female, person of color, different religion, coming to Canada, those are obstacles. So now that I know that, I can understand how would I be an ally better as well. But I want to get your take on how we could be better allies.
I mean, I talk about this a lot, and the first thing I say is not everybody needs to, raise their fists and pump their fists and stomp their feet and be loud, because I was able to give that little speech in a safe space where I knew that wasn't going to be the end of my career. I mean, I knew that there would be some implications, and I don't even know what those implications are, right? There are people who don't like me because of what I said. Yes, I can live with that, but I knew I wasn't going to get myself fired, and I did have the support of my team and my network. So, I had that the privilege of that platform, and I was able to take that. I know that most people don't. And, I think it's to expect people to put their livelihoods in jeopardy, for the right thing. It's just not fair. So I think that there are ways, big and small, to make a difference. And part of it is just what, I was talking about with education and learning. If you see something, say something. Awareness is the first step.
Mhm.
Understanding that not that your experience is not everybody else's experience. I see this all the time when, we talk about racism in hockey, and people, you'll get the flood on Twitter, and they all say, I played hockey. It was the most inclusive environment I've ever been part of. And
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Because it didn't happen to me. It didn't happen
Well,
to
okay,
Yeah.
exactly. So it didn't happen to you. So I think one of the very first things to keep in mind is your experience is your experience, and your experience is not everybody else's experience. And to start being mindful of what other people's experiences are, and be mindful that it can be a very closed seeming sport, and can feel, like not unwelcoming to outsiders. So, but I just think, along with awareness, just having the courage to do what you feel like you can do. We know what the right thing is. Um, and yes, so not everybody, can yell and scream from the rooftops. But listen, if you're on a board and you're like, oh, everybody is white and male, well, maybe
Shocking.
do something about it, Um, people in my position, and I have done this. If I'm invited to speak on a panel, and I look at that panel, and that panel is homogenous, I make note of that. This panel has, we're all white women. Like, that's not inclusive. So I think you can make a difference and be an ally in all kinds of different ways. And sometimes, sometimes it's intimidating, but in your heart, you know what the right thing to do is. And I think we just have to feel empowered to do it.
Yeah, I think that the heart side is, it's a compass. I remember I was just at an event last weekend, and we were sitting there, 28 degrees outside, dogs walking everywhere. Australian guy comes over and says he was talking about his red heeler, his dog. And I said, oh, like I used to have a border collie. So like, like really diligent sheep herding dogs and very on point and always playing the role of, keeping everything at bay. And he said something like, and he's Australian and they talk a little differently. So it took me a second to catch it, but he goes, yeah, they're really good at keeping people with a bit of a tan off the front porch.
Oh, goodness.
And yeah, like, so you got that right as well. But I heard that and like, bit of a tan, like, and my density of my idiocy kicks in, and I'm just like, did he? And then he just kept walking, and he was gone. And there's a school teacher in front of me, and I just said to the school teacher, I said, did he just say what I thought he said? Like, she's like, yeah. I'm like, well, that's kind of inappropriate. She's like, I'm a school teacher. That was absolutely inappropriate. But I got caught like a deer in the headlights, and I've got 10 years of education towards inclusivity and mental health awareness and advocacy. And I still got caught. And I'm just like, ah.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, I just beat myself up for a day afterwards of saying, like, that's just not appropriate. Like, what did you mean? Or what did you mean by that? sorry, can you clarify that for me, as opposed to just shaming them, because that never works anyway. But yeah, I mean, like, you get caught in that moment, and yeah, I look back at it, and my future self saw that going so much differently in my head, where I was just like, pause that there. Now I'll go back and give the cliche line I wanted to give, which never happens.
No.
But yeah, but that happens every single day. So I just don't know, when I get caught like a deer in the headlights in that moment, what do you say?
Listen, you're not going to get it right every time, but you caught yourself, and next time it'll be different, and I think that's what it is. We all have to kind of grow that side of ourselves.
Mm. The Hockey is for Everyone program that the NHL has one of my most special people that I love is Willie O'Ree. And I saw you online, and you had a picture of Willie O'Ree on your shirt as well. And I thought that was really cool. So I thought I'd just geek out for a minute, and just, there's you with the picture. I think we can enlarge that as well and bring that in so everyone can see what the shirt is. Do you just want to tell us about that shirt and the story behind it and where you were?
I think, that was, I think when he was finally entering into the Hall of Fame, they made these. So yeah, I was on set at Sportsnet, because I can see I was obviously doing top of her game, links, as we call it in the business. But yeah, I think Bauer sent it to me. Forgive me if it's wrong, but I was thrilled to have it and to own it. And, he's just such a beacon of hope and bright light, and has led the way and continues to lead the way for so many people in hockey who didn't feel like they were, they didn't feel like they were welcome.
Yeah, I've actually had the privilege of meeting Willie a few times. Our good friend Jim Britt from the Philadelphia Flyers at Ed Snyder Youth Hockey Foundation was kind enough to introduce us as well. There's Willie and I at the Hot Docs premiere of his movie Willie a few years ago. I want to say that was 2019, somewhere in that ballpark as well.
Yeah, I feel like it was pre-COVID for sure.
Yeah, it was pre-COVID, but I mean, it was just so amazing to see Willie get the acknowledgement and the edification, not only from people in the NHL as well, but adults 70 years old, 80 years old that were there. There was a gala afterwards that we went back afterwards and just shared stories as well. And Willie's getting up there in age right now, and this is before he was actually elected into the Hall of Fame as well. But to see the respect factor of people coming up and shaking his hand, and just the humility that Willie has as well is just fantastic as well. But one of the things that always blows my mind is, like, because I don't have this tool. I'm thick Irish skin. If somebody has done wrong by me, I pretty much will carry a grudge about that, or have carried a grudge. But he just didn't seem to carry any of that as well. Like, knowing just the vitriol for decades that man endured, trying to induce change, education, kindness, empathy, compassion, the countless hours that man spends in a rink, being a mentor to young kids, being able to show them how sport can transcend, whatever you can do in your life, and use it as a tool. I was blessed enough to have the ability to talk to Mr. Snyder before he passed away from the Philadelphia Flyers. And he was good friends with Willie, and his Ed Snyder Youth Hockey Foundation said that we use hockey as the hook to teach kids life skills.
Absolutely.
It's just the ability to get their interest level, get them engaged. And then when we have them, now we can implement education. Now we can implement, coaching, mentoring, take away all their financial grievances by giving them gear or coaching or resources. And so the Ed Snyder Youth Hockey Foundation does a wonderful job. I think they have 3,000 kids in the greater Philadelphia area that are now better people for Mr. Snyder's legacy as well. And he said one thing, like, he owned Comcast, the Philadelphia Flyers, and just said, I have never put my name on anything in my entire life, but this is the one thing that I want to be my legacy. And then 6 months later, he passed away. So I was just so happy to meet Mr. Snyder and go through that as well, because I think that makes your entire life legacy worthwhile.
Agreed.
So you're now in San Jose. You've transferred down to the American side of the border. You're now with the Sharks, which I'm wearing my teal shirt right now. I'm not sure if you can tell with my
I
black jackets.
yeah,
Kind of a big Sharks guy as well. The Flyers are my team, but the Western Conference doesn't count as the Eastern Conference, so I can cheer for the
exactly. You're
Sharks.
allowed to have one favorite
Yeah,
in
yeah.
each.
So, and I've always loved the Sharks. I used to play for my Friday night team was the Sharks as well, and
Hmm.
they sent me Nabokov's old goalie pads because I'm a goalie.
Nice.
So yeah, then I get to paint my mask Sharks colors as well. So I just kind of geeked out. So I've always kind of been that way as well. So I thought we'd just start with your transition down to San Jose and see how you're enjoying it, what your takeaways and what your learning curves have been down there in a kind of not Toronto hockey market, but still
Yeah.
a good hockey market, but just not the apex of the world.
Yeah, great hockey market, but super different. I mean, hockey's not number 1 or number 2 or number 3 or probably even number 4 here.
Yeah, let's be honest.
But it's true. I mean, in America, I would say in general, but certainly here in Northern California. That being said, the Sharks, there's a little bit of dip in the team right now as they try to kind of rebuild and reassess. But this is a team that had a lot of success. And so their fan base grew and their fan base is loyal. They are a little spoiled because they went so many years without missing the playoffs. But it's a great place. When I went to my first San Jose game, it just looked so different in the rink. It was younger. It was certainly more diverse racially. I think it's a wonderful place, and the Sharks are doing a fantastic job at helping grow the game. There's tons of places to play. They keep building new pads. They're out in the community, so I was really impressed with the organization when I first met them. I think they put their money where their mouths are, um, in terms of shifting the culture of the game, growing the game. So I'm really happy with the team. So I work for the Sharks themselves and I work for NBC Bay Area. So I do the game broadcasts also. So I have a really nice variety of duties. Um, but for sure it's different. You got to look a little harder for the stories. If you're anywhere in Canada, you're like, okay,
Yeah,
Google Georgetown hockey. I mean,
breathing. Yeah.
here it's there, but you can find them, and there are hockey heroes doing the same type of great work here as anywhere else. So it's been awesome. I can't believe that I managed to land, basically right where I should have, and the only jobs I'm suited for in Silicon Valley. So that's it. Yeah,
I'd
I'm
like to
not a
think
tech
it's true.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been really good.
I think one of the greatest experiences that I have is when I'm down in the States. Every year I go down to the States and I have 8 or 10 games that I go on a road trip for, and I'm able to meet the players after the game, talk about their foundations or what they do in the community. This year we're going to be doing the King Clancy Award, profiling the nominees from a lot of the NHL teams as well.
Nice.
Chris King, who's from the NHL, has done a great job of being able to give me the ability to get these interviews and go in these barns. But then what I come down to is it's just, I keep coming out of the exact same thing. It has nothing to do with hockey because I get to meet the foundational people of those organizations in the NHL, in those cities. And they're different from hockey operations people because they're not hockey operations people. They are not geared to win on the ice. They're geared to win off the ice. And how do we connect audience with product? And how do we create really fun, engaging events and stories that have the foundation win to raise money? Undoubtedly, in every single team, they have that foundation as well. The Sharks Foundation, obviously, you mentioned Heather Hooper as well.
Mhm.
So we want to give her a shout out as well for what they do, because all these people who are in the foundation sign, they get zero acknowledgement. They take zero edification
True.
from everybody for what they do, and they don't need it because they don't need the spotlight because they know that the kids win in the end, and that's the win for them. And I tell you, when I leave NHL cities, I'm obviously a Canadian, out in Toronto area. When you go down to Carolina, which was a fantastic place, Nashville, these places that just get it. and you get down there and you get to the twin pad arenas that they have for their minor hockey associations or the Junior Kings programs or the Preds or the Flyers as well. They do a fantastic job. They all do great jobs as well, but some of them stand out more for what they do as far as engagement and education and coaching and the resources that they have that they can bring to bear to really not even just grow the game, but just make kids better kids. And I think every parent can get behind that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's really, it's about creating a pastime and creating a good human, a well-rounded human. It's not about making the NHL. It's about, learning how to be a good friend and a good teammate
This
and
is it.
accountability and all those good qualities.
I think another one that I just stumbled across as well, and I would have never gotten this, is confidence. And if you give kids small wins, I
Absolutely.
always say there's no such thing as kids with bad hair. Sorry, no, there's no such thing as bad boys. There's only boys with bad hair. And if I would have had product in the 80s, I wouldn't have got bullied because I looked like Screech from Saved by the Bell. And, I got kicked down the hallway as well. But if you start giving kids small wins, then they'll be more engaged. They'll get a little bit more success and they might try harder or spend more hours to it or, realize that they have a gift inside of them that can now be drawn out as well. And so you're actually giving them small wins to build their confidence. And once their confidence grows, then you've got something tangible as well, where the kid can really actually get into their superpower or get super hyper focused in what they do and then watch them go. And I think all these foundations that do all this, they actually get that point with these NHL clubs that they're just there to implement those traits that will keep them successful life after hockey. Because life after hockey finds us all some sooner, some later.
Sure.
But young kids as well, they might catch them at 16, 17, 18, but they'll be better partners. They'll be better entrepreneurs. They'll be better employees. They'll be better parents because of this, of what they've learned, of what success is as an algorithm.
I totally agree. Could not agree more.
So there is a request I'm going to throw down to you because you are in the Silicon Valley, and we had John Carlos on the show as well a couple months ago. And there's a statue there that is on my bucket list. And I want to go down in April. I've got to go down to Monterey for an event as well. So I'm going to stop by. But on San Jose State's campus, there is a podium there. They call it the Victory Salute. But it's from the 1968 Olympic Games. And Tommy Smith won the 200-meter dash that year. Peter Norman from Australia was second. And John Carlos took third. And the two Americans, Tommy Smith and John Carlos went to San Jose State. And so they made this podium, of the two of them from that iconic moment. If you've seen this picture in the 1960s, it's iconic for civil rights. And the story goes that Peter Norman was dying with cancer, and they were making this podium for them as a statue, and John Carlos went to go visit it. And it was absent of Peter Norman. And John Carlos was like, why is that absent? And they said, well, he didn't want to be a part of it. So he went to the dean's office on campus. He made a long distance call to Australia. He called Peter Norman, who had been an ally for him and a brother for him his entire life, after all that. And Peter Norman had lost everything in his life because of that moment. So they ended up taking that out and giving him that space so that way everybody else could fit with civil rights. And there's the statue right there.
Incredible. Yeah.
It's a powerful moment as well.
That's amazing.
So if I can make a request, if you can actually get there someday and stand with human rights and with John Carlos and Tommy Smith as Peter Norman, I would greatly appreciate that. And send us a
I feel like it's ridiculous that I haven't been there yet, and seeing as I live about 20 minutes away. So absolutely.
Awesome. So lastly, I know obviously Tara Slone is the entity, but you are a mother. You are a good human being, which my friend Victoria had said. So to you just have to take the compliment. So tell me exactly the life of Tara Slone as a human being, mother, all the hats you wear that people just don't get to see, and some people usually don't ever ask you.
Well, I mean, I think I'm pretty normal. I live currently in a blended family. So the reason I even ended up in California was I fell in love, and as hometown hockey was coming to its conclusion, and we all kind of predicted it. So um started to think about maybe coming down here to be with my partner Dan. And so and then, that's when I started to talk to the Sharks, and that's when I started to talk to NBC. So we live in a town just outside of San Jose. Um, Dan has a couple of teenage daughters. I have a teenage daughter. And a new puppy, because why? Because I wanted to make my life so much more complicated. So
So
yeah,
worth it. So worth
we
it.
have three teenage girls in the house, and it's wow. Like, I was a bad kid for a few years there, but I'm not sure what I did to deserve all of this. But um so we are just trying to shepherd them through these formative years as best as we can.
Is
That's
that
all I can
tween
say.
like drama, hormonal, those era?
Yeah, I mean, all kinds of things, I think, without divulging too much personally about any given child. Yeah, it's a really, I mean, I remember I wouldn't relive these years.
Ever.
You paid me. Like,
Yeah.
they're so hard. And there's your brain is informed. Like, it's just, there's so much going on, and there's so much socially that's going on. And I think the world of social media has made the dynamics even hard. Like, I don't even know. It's awful.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to stay on top of it. That's it.
Yeah. And you know what? I without divulging too much information as well in my side, I have a soon to be 15-year-old next month, going on 30.
Mhm.
Um, and it's hard because as a
Oh,
father,
yeah.
you look at them as they're 5 and 6, and Daddy, would you like to play T? I'm like, Daddy would love to play T with you. Let's play T. Like, let's have fun. Let's go sledding. Let's do, like, cute fun things. And that's gone, man. That's gone. And now it's hair and makeup and nails, and and you just kind of look at these things, and I just like you said, I would not go back to being a kid for all the money in the world. You could give me Elon Musk money, and I would never want to go back to that era ever
Yeah,
again,
that's tough.
because I was a prisoner of, like, I didn't know what self-expression was. And I went to the School of the Arts. I was a drama major. So that should have come really easy to me that way as well. But I mean, like, processing feelings and emotions, the moon.
Well,
Obviously
yeah,
growing up in the army as well, that never occurred to us as well. So
yeah.
I think these are the things nowadays that we need to actually have conversations, not about how do we, shelter our kids from these topics, but more how do we give them tools so that way they can have polite discourse with each other, agree to disagree, and then not get triggered, and not just, like, lose their stuff online by engaging in all of this, without just saying, you know what, I see that's how you see it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And you just walk away. But that's a superpower these days.
Yeah. No, it's nobody's modeling it for them, so why would they do that?
Nobody's modeling with them as well. So, well, Tara, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been, like I said, a long time for me watching your work online and on TV as well. For you to be on the show is amazing. I do have some parting gifts, as the 1970s TV shows used to say. Our good friends at Mix Chicks, which is like my go-to for hair products these days, has generously donated a package to you and a package to your charity as well, whoever you want to, like, build confidence with
Oh, nice.
kids. Like I said, there's no such thing as bad boys. There's just boys with bad hair. So,
Sounds great.
so we'll send that off to you as well. You can go online on their website, mixchicks.net, and then be able to find out what product line you want. Let me know, and we will send you a love care package.
Thank you. Thanks. And thanks for
Well,
having me. This has been really
yeah, as well. Now, did I miss anything as well before we go? Is there anything that you want to thank, or anyone that you want to talk about? Or
No, this was great. I mean, listen, I just turned 50. There's lots of nooks and crannies in my life, but no, in terms of my career and my the big kind of punctuating points, you hit it.
by the way, I saw your post online when you turned 50. I wish you happy birthday that day, but it was just so on point. You covered all matters of sin of hitting 50, of hitting that age that we don't speak of. I'm 51, so we hit that last year.
Yeah.
But when I saw that, it was just like, you know what? I think everybody who reads this is going to be able to like sit with this, and not in like your share, but it becomes our experience in your share, which just makes it more powerful, because when you can be vulnerable and raw and share from a safe space, and it opens up somebody else to be able to do the exact same thing. So I want to give you credit for that post, because that was really actually on point. So
Thank you.
as well. And thanks again for coming on the show, Tara Slone. I'm sure I'll be seeing you as well down the road. If you want to follow Tara, you can follow her on Instagram feeds as well. What are your feeds?
At Tara Slone, I think on everything. TARASLONE. Yeah. And I'm even on Blue Sky now.
Yeah. So we'll put those up on the feeds on the site as well when we add the podcast.
Great.
As well. And thank you again for joining us here at Tara Slone.
My great pleasure. Thank you. Thanks, Cam.
And that is like our guest, Tara Slone. We want to thank our sponsor, Padskins, Holy Chuck Burgers, and of course, Mixed Chicks as well for facilitating this. We'll bring up our producer, Camel Rock, and we'll get his one-on-one of his thoughts on Tara Slone.
Amazing. That was so great to hear from her. I know you're going to ask me to bring up one takeaway, but there's a lot spinning through my head right now. I really like the part, though, where, first of all, the clip from Hometown Hockey, where she kind of broke the wall there and said some stuff that maybe not everyone would have wanted her to say. Yeah. She said something along the lines of, we need to be leaders. We're following, not leading. And you can tell while she's saying that, she's taking that opportunity to be that leader. And even 2 years later on our podcast, she's staying with what she said, and I really respect that. So that's just something I wanted to say.
Yeah, well said, because, I mean, that's on point for, I think, Tara lives her life, in that integrity, where she comes from that standpoint. She's courageous. She sticks with it. I mean, it's really hard to be a social media or a TV personality out there. It's really hard. You have to differentiate yourself from your online presence into how you live your life offline or off on the camera. But Tara has that, that this is who I am. She said, I'm an open book, so you can ask me anything that you want, because she has that fine line of just like, this is me and this is how I am, and I'm going to left and I'm going to right. I stay in that center course. So I'm really glad that she shared that as well, because it's my great hope that, people will see that as an example, especially in the Hockey Canada.
Yes, exactly.
And then be able to like follow the example that Tara and people like Tara lead in the world. So that way now we can be kinder, we can be more empathetic, we can actually be more connected, and enjoy the sport of hockey or football or baseball or soccer or whatever sport you want, with the view that your kids are becoming better people, using the sport as the hook to teach them life skills. And that's the most important part.
Absolutely.
So I want to thank you all for joining us today for Tara Slone. We're going to have the socials up on our feed as well. So if you want to follow us on Instagram, it's Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo, and at Tara Slone on everything, so she said. So I want to thank our good friends at Mixed Chicks as well for sending out the hair love to Tara, the show as well. Like I said, there's no such thing as bad boys, there's boys with bad hair. So if you have that, get it fixed. You've got resources now. Go to mixedchicks.net, look at the product line, and then figure out what you need to do to get stuff done, and off you go. Because like I said, there's no such thing as bad boys, only boys with bad hair. And we're doing people helping people, because that's powerful stuff.